I, 27M, and my wife, 26F, have been married for 2 years and have been together for 6. For context, I was repeatedly roped by my brother's babysitter when I was around 9. She would grope me, force me to remove my pants, and then either stick my stick in her mouth or try and give me a hand service whenever my 4-year-old brother slept. Most of the time I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything to stop it. She would always buy me sweets or video games for my Nintendo DS as a reward. So in a weird way, I started growing attached to her and would try and seek the abuse if it meant getting her rewards. I knew whatever she was doing was wrong, but she would always threaten to take my life if I ever told my parents, so I never did while the abuse was actively happening. Everything stopped as soon as she graduated college and moved states. I only realized how fudged up the things she did to me were when I was around 14/15 and understood the concept of consent. When I tried to open up to my parents, strict Catholics, it never ended well. First, they blamed it on corn and claimed it corrupted my mind into imagining these things happening to me. If I claimed I was telling the truth, my dad would beat the shit out of me and my mom would ground me. I tried opening up to my friends, but their reactions weren't any better. My male friends just called me lucky and asked if the service was good. My female friends claimed I was just lying to get attention and laughed in my face. I learned to just try and forget the past and vowed to myself that I would never mention this to anyone again. Now on to last week. Me and my wife had heard some good things about this show called Baby Reindeer on Netflix from our friends. Going into it, I knew it revolved around sexual abuse and stalking. In my mind, I thought I was over the past, and I could handle watching the show no problem. Big fudging mistake. At the end of episode 4, I was literally on the verge of tears, and I felt all the supposedly forgotten memories come flooding back. At the end of the next episode, one couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife paused the show and just stared at me. After a while, I did finally manage to calm down a bit. She asked me why I was crying, and I just let everything out. She said she was sorry, hugged me, and we went to bed soon after. I apologized to her the following morning for ruining our night. From the moment I let her know about the abuse, I felt something change in our relationship. No more kisses when I came back from work, and no more initiating anything intimate from her side. She wasn't mean or anything, but I felt like something was bothering her. I tried to apologize for maybe making her uncomfortable, but she would just claim there was nothing bothering her, and I was just being paranoid. Yesterday, me and my wife got into a pretty heated argument about her lying about taking out the trash, but during the argument, she said something that floored me beyond belief. She literally said, "At least I'm not lying about being roped, you fudging narcissist." I literally couldn't process whatever just came out of her mouth. She tried apologizing right after saying that, but I just packed a few clothes and left to stay at my friend's house. She tried calling me several times since, but I haven't bothered picking up and have blocked her for time being. I know I might have trauma dumped on her, and I know women aren't into that, but I just want some sort of acknowledgement/support. I don't have anyone left to turn to with this, and that's why I'm posting here. I've had 2 therapists to date, and both didn't seem to help much. Gut is telling me to divorce her, but she's genuinely the love of my life. Throwing away 6 years because of this one moment doesn't sit right with me, but ick. Am I actually the asshole here? I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions on my situation. Relevant comments. Commenter. My heart aches for you. Being cuddle abused is bad enough, but that nobody believed you and either mocked you or punished you for telling what happened is horrific. And I was going to suggest therapy, but I looked at your post again and saw that it didn't do much for you. Maybe a Rope Crisis Center will be able to recommend a therapist who has experience with victims of CSA. What your wife said is appalling. It seems you feel she doesn't love you since your revelation and isn't on your side. That's reason enough to want to leave her. Commenter. You did something brave by opening up and she threw it back in your face. I'm sorry that you've faced such rejection your whole life. Unfortunately, that is all too common for men who have been cuddle assaulted. It's up to you to decide if you want her back, but either way is valid. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure this happens a lot to women as well. I went to a few anonymous meetings and heard a lot of the same from women who claim people just thought they were trying to get a settlement or something. Commenter. NTA. As a CSA survivor, the turning point for me in my marriage was when he told me to get over it, and it's been so long. We are now divorcing. While it wasn't the sole reason I left, knowing that he wasn't a safe space for me anymore, if at all, was a driving force. So while I won't tell you to leave her, I will say you do need to speak with a professional regarding the assault and keep her at a distance while you work through your emotions. She can never take back what she said to you, and there needs to be consequences for that. Commenter. And to add to the part about talking to a professional, OP, you mentioned the ones you've talked to haven't helped. I would keep trying and go to a different therapist until you find one with whom you mesh well. See if you can find one who has a focus on cuddle abuse trauma and even check if they have experience in this area with male clients. Commenter. NTA also, I wouldn't call what you did trauma dumping. You opened up to your wife. You're supposed to support each other. I'm sure she was probably shocked. Would explain some of her lack of empathy, but to call you a liar and a narcissist? No. You've spent enough time being invalidated by assholes. Commenter. Not only that, weaponize the trauma of one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone to make OP feel small, guilty, betrayed, insecure, alone, invalid, then call them a narcissist and a liar. To retaliate for being called out not taking the bins out. It's monstrous. OP is right to consider that an instant relationship ender. Because fuck me, it's so many layers of evil. Commenter. NTA. Therapy. I'm a CSA survivor. I'm a woman. I told my ex-husband about some of it after a trauma response to something he was attempting to do in bed. I wasn't comfortable and didn't think I could. He seemed to be understanding. One night after he had been drinking heavily, he tried to do this again and I said no. He said, "Why not? I'm not the one who roped you, so don't take your bullshit out on me by denying me." He assaulted me and did it anyway. Did y'all know that back in the late 80s there was no laws on the books about martial rope until 1993? BC, you couldn't rope your wife back then? He's an ex-husband for a reason. She needs to be an ex for a reason as well. I wish you the best. Commenter. I don't think you can call that trauma dumping. If she was some random girl you were on a first date with, yeah, sure. But she's your wife. And that's the sort of established relationship that should be a safe place for you to open up about past traumas. The fact that it ended up not being safe isn't your fault. And I'm so sorry that she responded to you the way she did. I understand feeling conflicted about divorce because it is such a hard thing to go through, but you absolutely would not be wrong to do so. I wish you the best, whatever you decide to do. Update 1. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the amazing love and support. For the first time in my life, I felt heard and didn't just feel like a burden to people. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but I just want to let you all know that I'm beyond grateful. As for the update, shortly after posting, I did decide to go back home. I had work the next day and didn't want to burden my friend with my marital issues any longer. Upon coming home, I was met with her screaming at me for just leaving the apartment and ghosting her without having an adult conversation with her. I just let her know how hurt I was by the things she said to me and that I needed some time to myself to gather my thoughts. She tried arguing back with how there is nothing to think about and that I was being an immature crybaby. From that point onwards, we have barely been on speaking terms. I know a lot of people are going to be mad hearing this, but the longer I thought about my marriage and my wife, the more I wanted to give her another chance. She wasn't perfect by any means, but neither was I. A lot of my past relationships ended as a result of my past catching up with me, but I really want to change it this time. She isn't the first partner/friend to have this type of reaction to what I went through. I know it's tough, but I feel like I just needed to bite the bullet if it meant keeping my sanity. I didn't want to start over again. After we somewhat started talking to each other again, I sat her down for a serious conversation and let her know again how hurt I was by everything she said. I let her know about all the ridicule I suffered as a result of me opening up, and her having the same reaction just reopened unhealed wounds. She just kept quiet until I mentioned couples therapy. She then started crying, but not for the reason I thought. I tried holding her, but she just pushed me away and screamed that I seriously thought about ending our marriage over some silly argument we had, and that I was just trying to make up some sob story after watching Baby Reindeer for attention and sympathy. According to her, all of this was just too convenient to be believable. If it was real, why didn't I mention any of this throughout the 6 years we have been together? At this point, even I started tearing up. I apologized for keeping this from her for so long, and then tried reassuring her that I in fact wasn't making this up, but she just slapped me and stormed off to bed. That was a week ago, and I have been sleeping on the couch ever since. Whenever I try to speak to my wife, she just makes snarky comments towards me and just storms off. I just cry myself to sleep most nights and just wish I never fucking watched that show. None of this shit would have happened. I currently don't have the money for therapy and just feel lost. I don't want a divorce. I want to try and make this work, but this whole mess is just so draining. I'm not in contact with my family, so I don't have anyone I can turn to with this. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Relevant comments. Commenter. There is no saving this relationship. From the looks of it, you're going to end up miserable and ultimately stop telling her things to avoid arguments and/or belittling from her end. Be honest with yourself. What exactly are you looking for in marriage counseling? She'll need her own individual therapy before she can take on marriage counseling. It won't get anywhere if only one person acknowledges there's a problem. OP, I understand you've been with her for 6 years and she's by far the best you've had, but she isn't the best for you, let alone the one. Why compromise the rest of your life to her when you can get out and move on? You're only 27. You have so much time to get out there and find someone who loves and respects you. All of you. You still have so much time to find someone who'll take you and your trauma seriously, who will work with you every step of the way no matter what it is, who will own up to their own faults in a so-called adult conversation. You deserve better. You know you do. Don't settle for less. You wouldn't treat yourself the same way your wife does. Get therapy when you have the money, and work on yourself if you believe that you have flaws of your own that contribute to a relationship's failure. It's a cliché saying, but it's better to have no company than bad company. OP, everyone here supports and believes in you. The only person left is you. You can do it. Within 10 years, you will look back at this and thank yourself for leaving this situation. It's hard work, but you can do it. Commenter. At the end of the day, staying with her is increasing your trauma. Please leave her for your own sake. Commenter. Sir, I have been married for 18 years. I have known my husband for 22 years. After 9 years together, he disclosed that he was attacked and raped at the age of 14, after knowing throughout our relationship that I was also a survivor of child cuddle abuse. I tell you this because I want you to know what my response was. I held him while he cried. I asked if he wanted to report it to the police. I supported him when he didn't. I encouraged him to seek counseling. When he was ready, I talked to him about my own experiences. At no point did I belittle him, disbelieve him, make him feel less of a man, criticize him, tear him down, and I certainly did not act physically violent towards him. Your wife's behavior is so far on the other fucking side of normal, I wonder, frankly, if she's human. You deserve better. This is cruel and vicious behavior on the part of your wife. She's a horrible, horrible person and she will never improve. But you have the rest of your life to live happily. Please, 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 walk away. Commenter. What you are going through isn't normal, and this is not a healthy relationship. Your wife is abusive. She belittles your experience as an abuse survivor. Then she hit you. That's 3 strikes in my book. You can do much better than this abusive woman. For your own mental health, you would be better off without her. I understand, but I'm afraid I won't find another GF/wife after her. I have issues being intimate, and rightfully a lot of women aren't into that. My wife was waiting till marriage, so it worked out perfectly for the both of us. Commenter. Dude, I was also raped as a boy by a man. There's plenty of women who don't judge for that kind of thing. The fear of being alone shouldn't keep you in an abusive relationship. Up until where she slapped you, it could have been explained away by a bad reaction to uncomfortable information, but it's never okay to hit someone you're in a relationship with, regardless of who has what in their pants. Yeah, she wasn't the first partner I've had that slapped me. I just added it to my update thinking it wasn't that big of a deal, but people here have made me realize it isn't normal. Commenter. People start over in their 70s, and you are going to stay with this unsympathetic woman. A woman who doesn't care enough to believe you, and then belittle you. Are you seriously willing to stay in this relationship? Sir, you were cuddly abused. Your wife doesn't care and isn't supportive and is mentally abusive towards you. Well, if you don't want to start over, okay. Thank you, but please understand that Eve spent 6 years with her, 7 in August. She's the first one that was willing to accept some of the flaws I have. Edit. Eve realized that I'm just beating a dead horse by using this as justification to stay with her. I'm contacting a divorce lawyer. Commenter. You're talking about what's called a sunk cost fallacy. It's the belief that because you've invested so much time and money into something that you can't give it up. This marriage has run its course. Commenter. Accept you? She ridiculed you, and then when you apologized, which you did not need to do, quite frankly, she physically assaulted you. She called you a liar and struck you. This woman does not accept you. She's even turned down the option of couples therapy, so clearly has no interest in making this work. What she wants is for you to be wrong and her to be right, and she's not going to change until you bend your reality to fit her desires. You can't do that, because it will destroy you. If you think wasting 6 years is bad, just imagine how you'll feel when you've wasted 40 years on someone who belittles your trauma and hits you when she can't handle the reality of a situation. Think about that for a while. Do you really want to spend decades living with someone who thinks the best way of dealing with situations she doesn't like is to simply hit you and run away? You can do better. Update 2. After a lot of back and forth in my head, I finally contacted a divorce lawyer. It felt like ripping off a band-aid that had been stuck on for way too long. The idea of starting over terrified me, but I knew staying in this toxic environment would be worse. I scheduled a meeting with the lawyer for the following week. In the meantime, things at home were tense, to say the least. My wife continued with her snarky comments and cold shoulder routine. The few times we did talk, it was like walking on eggshells, just waiting for the next bomb to drop. I didn't expect a sudden change, but the level of resentment between us was suffocating. Honestly, it felt like we were both just waiting for someone to officially call it quits. Then, last night happened. I was lying on the couch, trying to distract myself with some mindless TV, when she suddenly came into the living room. She stood there for a minute, just staring at me, and I thought, here we go again. But instead of another round of insults, she started crying. Like, full-on, gut-wrenching sobs. She kept repeating that she was sorry, that she didn't mean the things she said, and that she was just overwhelmed by everything. She told me that she felt blindsided by my confession and didn't know how to handle it, that she had her own issues with intimacy and felt like I was hiding something huge from her for all these years. It was a lot to take in, and part of me felt for her. But then she dropped another bombshell. Apparently, she had been talking to her mom about everything. Her mom, who I always thought was this sweet, church-going lady, had convinced her that I was making up the whole abuse story to manipulate her. She had been feeding my wife these toxic ideas for weeks, and my wife, in her vulnerability, believed it. She said she was so scared of being hurt or betrayed that she latched onto her mom's words instead of trusting me. I didn't know whether to be angry, sad, or relieved that there was some kind of explanation for her behavior. But even with all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that things had gone too far. She crossed a line when she hit me, and all the apologies in the world couldn't erase that. So, I told her I still needed space. I didn't commit to the divorce, but I also didn't say we were going to fix things. I needed time to think. She seemed to understand and said she'd give me whatever time I needed. But here's the kicker. I got a call from my lawyer this morning saying my wife had reached out to him. She's apparently trying to get ahead of things, claiming that she's willing to work on our marriage but wants to ensure her interests are protected if we do split. I guess the whole "let me think" thing didn't land as well as I thought. Now, I'm back at square one, but this time it feels different. I know I need to do what's best for me, and if that means cutting ties, so be it. But I'm not rushing into anything. I'm still processing everything and trying to figure out what I really want. The worst part? I can't help but wonder if she's still listening to her mom, planning her next move behind my back. Trust is shattered, and I'm not sure if it can be rebuilt. But for now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. So yeah, that's where things stand. It's a mess, but at least I'm not crying myself to sleep every night anymore. Progress, right? Anyway, I'm not sure what the next step is, but I'll keep you all posted. Thanks again for being here with me through all this. It means more than you know. Update 3. After my last update, I was trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Work, sleep, repeat the usual. But the tension at home was unbearable. My wife was still giving me space, but it felt more like she was plotting her next move rather than genuinely trying to give me time to think. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I decided to dig a little deeper into what she'd been up to. Maybe it was paranoia, but I had this gut feeling that her sudden shift from hostile to remorseful wasn't the whole story. So, I checked our shared accounts phone, email, you name it. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but at this point, I needed to protect myself. And boy, did I find something. Turns out, her mother wasn't the only one feeding her toxic ideas. My wife had been in contact with her ex-boyfriend, the same ex who tried to win her back just before we got married. She hadn't spoken to him in years, at least that's what I thought, but there were emails, texts, and even some late-night phone calls that I hadn't noticed. They weren't overtly romantic, but the tone was familiar, and she'd been venting to him about our marriage. In one of the texts, she told him that she didn't know if she could stay married to me after everything that came out, that she wasn't sure if she could handle all the baggage. He responded that she deserved better, someone who didn't come with so much drama. That one stung. When I confronted her about it, she broke down again, swearing it wasn't what it looked like. She claimed she only reached out to him because she didn't feel like she could talk to anyone else. Her friends were mutual, and she felt isolated. She insisted nothing physical happened, and that it was just emotional support during a rough time. But honestly, that felt like another slap in the face. Here I was, trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of our marriage, and she was confiding in her ex? That's a level of betrayal I wasn't prepared for. I told her that I was done, that this was the final straw. She tried to argue, saying that I was being irrational and that I was throwing away everything we'd built. But all I could see was that text, someone who didn't come with so much drama. Like my trauma was some kind of burden she couldn't carry anymore. I packed my things and left that night. I'm staying at a motel for now, just trying to clear my head and figure out my next move. I haven't told my lawyer yet, but I plan to file for divorce soon. It's time to cut my losses and move on, even if it feels like ripping my heart out in the process. Funny thing is, After all this, I don't even feel sad anymore. Just numb. Like I've been hollowed out. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it means I'm finally ready to let go. So, what's next? I have no idea. I'm just taking it one day at a time. Maybe I'll find a therapist who actually helps this time.